Okay, so as you know, we're going straight through the red letters. We're we're working our way through every word that is written in red in the various translations of the New Testament. We're not just, I've kind of bounced around with different translations, and anyway, that's just where we're at, and that's what we're doing. So I appreciate you listening, appreciate you being a part. Today's talk is called "Turn the Other Cheek." Or fight back. Which is it? What are we supposed to do? Turn the other cheek or fight back? Let's talk about that today. I've labeled this as Jesus's most misunderstood teaching. I might end up labeling a lot of things as Jesus's most misunderstood teaching because we misunderstand a lot of what he says. Okay, so here's the text. Matthew 5:38 through 42 says, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go a mile, go also the second mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Ooh, that's interesting. Do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. I wonder why that hadn't even crossed my mind. That text, like I've thought about the right left cheek, left cheek, the cloak, and the one extra mile. But I didn't even address verse 42 in this text. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. That is fascinating. I don't give to everyone who begs from me. And as a mortgage lender, I'm not even allowed to not refuse anyone who wants to borrow. Well, I actually never refuse someone who wants to borrow. I would just tell them it's not time yet. We got a lot of work to do for you. So I just got to upfront tell you that for some reason I left verse 42 totally out of this conversation. So these slides do not address verse 42. Freudian slip, maybe. I don't know. I'm just being honest. It's funny. We talked last week about being honest and about how honesty is challenging, and I argued that no one is completely honest. We try. We're different. We're different. Very levels of honest, but complete honesty is really hard. All right, Matthew 5:38 through 42. It's funny, I put 42 on every slide maybe, and then don't even address the last verse. That may end up being our biggest conversation this Sunday. Or maybe we talk about verse 42 the following week all by itself. Maybe that's worth really digging into. Okay, that's the plan for now. We're going to dig into verse 42 2 weeks from this coming Sunday, or 1 week from this coming Sunday. Okay, interpretation one. Typically, when you read this text, I started out thinking that this was about not fighting back. So interpretation number one is non-retaliation. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Fighting back only fuels the cycle of violence. Refuse revenge. Absorb the harm. Give freely even when wronged. Power is surrendered in trust that brings God's justice, that God brings justice. Oh, power is surrendered. Trust that God. Excuse me, man. Oh. So the core posture there is ending the conflict by not escalating it. There's another way of interpreting this. There's another interpretation of this. It's the creative nonviolent resistance. This is that idea. Well, we'll talk about it more, but it's about refusing humiliation without using violence. It's about turning the other cheek to demand equal treatment. It's about giving the cloak to expose injustice and shame the entire system. We talked a lot last week about how we don't wrestle with flesh and blood. And I know this was not in our red letters, but we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities and powers, which is why I find myself as a follower of Christ. I cannot align myself with a denomination or with a political party. I think that when we put our allegiance too strongly into a denomination or a party or a club or an organization, we end up finding ourselves being loyal to that group, even when it's not right, if that makes sense. And so that's why, you'll never hear me saying, um, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or uh, I'm this denomination or this group. I feel like following Jesus has to allow me to, has to cause me to remain fluid. And so I'm going to follow Jesus wherever he leads, whether that aligns with some group or not. Okay. Disrupt the system without becoming violent. That's the two. Here's the comparison of the two. We got one is just non-retaliation. The other one is creative resistance. It's fighting back with some creative idea instead of a sword or a gun. Okay. The core problem addressed by each reading in the first reading, the idea is non-retaliation. In the don't fight back reading, what problem is Jesus trying to solve? We'll talk about that. In the creative resistance reading, what problem is he trying to expose? All right. Which interpretation emphasizes inner transformation and which emphasizes public disruption? I think it's kind of obvious, but I want you to think about it. Are those goals actually different, or are they the two sides of the same coin? Are they the same thing? If Jesus is teaching passive non-retaliation, why specify the right cheek? What did he mean by that? Was it just inadvertent? He didn't have a specific meaning with that phrase, or did he mean something specifically? What does that detail add or fail to add to the basic reading? The tension is confrontation and enemy love. How do we confront evil and yet love our enemies? If Jesus is inviting a confrontational act that forces equality, how does that square with the call to love your enemies? You could risk more violence or create nonviolent resistance. Does daring an oppressor to treat you as an equal risk more violence? Or is it a creative way to fight back without violence? So in this part where you say give him the cloak as well, what good does it do to give even what more than what is demanded? How does giving function in a world with unjust systems? The idea here is that in this time, it was not shameful to be naked. It was shameful to look on nakedness. And so what happens in this scenario is somebody demands your cloak. And so the person just goes ahead and strips naked and gives them everything because it was shameful to look on naked, and it's not to be naked. It's kind of different today, right? We kind of feel a little different about that. In the theory that Jesus was teaching them to shame the debt servicer, it's a public exposure. Is public exposure a powerful protest? Um, I, I've got somebody that's messaging me now telling me they're going to be homeless soon. They're going to be kicked out of their home. I asked them how far they're behind. They said a lot. Ask them how many people live in their home. They said a lot. I mean, it's tough. It's how do you figure out? That's back to that whole don't reject anybody that asks you, that begs of you. What do you do if you help everybody that asks? Does Jesus intend us to absorb injustice or to unmask it? Which are you more naturally equipped to do? Going the second mile, is it generosity or enabling? It's a call. Is it a call to civil disobedience? And how do we apply this in modern day times? Why and how would someone force you to go with them the first mile? Where is the line between generosity and enabling abuse? If the second mile is meant to put the soldier at risk of violating Roman law, I think that's possible. Is Jesus encouraging civil disobedience? If so, why does he never name it explicitly? Maybe that phrase wasn't around at the time, but it kind of has that idea. How does this idea of civil disobedience apply to today with the growing army of rogue, of the rogue president, this ICE army? You say, Josh, this ICE army is just trying to get non-citizens out of the country. Well, I think you know better than that. Okay, the historical practice. Angaria. I don't know how to say that, so I could have said it wrong. Roman soldiers had a legal right to force civilians to carry their gear for a limited distance. We'll talk about this more on Sunday. We'll go through this slide, talk about it, ask questions, allow you to comment, to share your thoughts. The anthropology of it, why this was so loaded. It was power, not distance. It wasn't about carrying it a mile. It was about showing that power. Being forced to carry a soldier's pack publicly reinforced, you are beneath me. Your time, strength, and body are mine. Why only 1 mile? Why did they prevent it? Why did they limit it to 1 mile? Why is going the second mile shocking? The soldier may be asking himself, am I breaking the rules? Who's watching? Why won't this guy stop? It's a power dynamic that is flipped. Okay, so let's pull it all together. Why is it so dangerous? Which interpretation better explains why this teaching felt so dangerous, both to religious and empirical authorities? What's the social impact? If these sayings were lived out at scale, which reading would be more socially destabilizing? And should that matter for how we interpret Jesus? Sound versus function. Is it possible that Jesus intentionally crafted sayings that sound passive but function proactively? What's the value of both? What could we gain or lose by considering both readings at once? On social media, does turning the other cheek look like refusing to clap back at outrage and misfortune? Or does it look like responding in a way that publicly exposes hypocrisy and power without becoming abusive yourself? How would each interpretation shape what you post, quote, tweet, or refuse to engage? All right. My personal journey of interpretation, I grew up hearing that Jesus taught us to turn the other cheek. But we were also taught about how to fight back. So my upbringing did not really take Jesus's call to turn the other cheek seriously. I remember being taught to fight back. Creative resistance. When I heard the third way, when I heard this idea, and I don't remember first being exposed to it by Walter Wink, but Walter Wink seems to be one that taught this. But anyway, when I heard this idea, I was glad to have a creative way to fight back. I wanted to fight back. I later learned about the interpretation that Jesus was subtly fighting back or teaching as far as how to creatively fight back. I love that idea. It fit me. Today, I see value in both interpretations. There's no call for interpretation that involves or encourages violent retaliation. So for me, I see a synthesis of the both. Sometimes I think it's wise to just shut my mouth. Now, I'm not saying I do it. I'm not very good at shutting my mouth, but I see value. Okay, these are things we'll talk about this coming Sunday at A Place to Talk. Hope you can be a part.